what we're going to see here is Crispy added this protection to almost every function that had a stack buffer. So it was like 60% of the functions in the program. And what you're going to see here in the filament is that because they added those protections, the execution trace is actually longer. Both of these execution traces are responding to the same input. So we're seeing here that is the reference POV is being thrown against both binaries. The reference binary on the left, bin 646, and Crispy's replacement, bin 678. So the reference POV was vulnerable, but Crispy's replacement wasn't. But because of those extra protections that they added in, we see the execution trace was longer. And as we'll see as the game unfolds, the performance of replacements is incredibly important. It affects the score, how efficient these replacement binaries are being. So here's Galactica's replacement. Galactica also had a patch that protected them from the POV. And what we see here is the same sort of thing. We're looking on the left, and this is where the function is exiting. We see the add 8 ESP, pop EBP, and we're going to correlate that to over here on the right, where Galactica's replacement is getting ready to exit this function, but they added their own special protection. I really like this one. It's very efficient. First, we're going to see them take the return address off of the stack. Then they actually dereference it and get the last 4 bytes before that address. And what that should be the end of the call function that was calling into this function. So what we should see if we look back at those bytes is we should see the address of the function that we're in. And they go ahead and check that. If it's correct, they let the function return like normal, and if it is incorrect, they call the terminate system call. Now again, kind of like Crispy, they sprinkled this protection all over the binary. Let's take a look at their filament. So here's the same reference POV being thrown against the original binary and Galactica's replacement.
So gray original reference, and then blue the Galactica replacement. So original crash.
Yeah, and we see the same sort of thing that we saw on the last one, which is that all these additional generic protections sprinkled all over the binary created a much longer execution trace than the original. So Xandra also had a replacement on this challenge, and their replacement did also mitigate the POV from Rubius. Let's take a look and see what's different. So again, to get our reference here, with the original on the left, we're looking at the end of this function here. We got the add 18 ESP, pop EBP, and we're going to correlate that with what we see at the very top over here. So all of the code on the right that we see below this is all the part of the generic protection that's been added. And what I noticed right away here is that we have a bunch of floating point instructions that have been added. That's interesting. It provides the same mechanism. It's a generic protection for the return address, but using the floating point makes it a little bit more efficient as far as processing goes, and then it also makes it a little bit harder to reverse engineer. So let's see how this mechanism worked out for Xandra in the filament.